Today I will be running down a war action drama film titled Fortress of War. Please be advised that there will be spoilers ahead of this video, so chill out and enjoy it as I narrate it for you. The movie opens up with Sasha Akimov, who plays music for the 333rd Regiment of the Soviet Union Army at Brest Fortress. His parents died in the Spanish War, and he has only one brother as a family member. A young girl named Anya catches Sasha's attention. He then gets off the stage to meet her, but his older brother, Akimov, stops him on the way and orders him to return to the stage. Anya's father, Lieutenant Kashevatov, calls her to take a family picture, jokingly saying that managing the regiment is simpler than managing his family. Sasha gets onto the truck. Instead of going home, he decides to head to the fortress headquarters. Yefim Fomin, a commissar, tries to get the train ticket so that he can visit his wife and children in Brest, but the ticket agent informs him and everyone else outside the office that he has received orders to stop issuing tickets. Then Fomin has to walk the rest of the journey to the fortress, but a young serviceman named Kolka pulls over his truck and offers him a ride. The commissar pens a letter, which he intends to send to Moscow, saying that the Germans are preparing to attack their ally Belarus. As soon as they reach the fortress, Kolka goes straight to the store to meet his girlfriend. Lieutenant Vainston summons the commander of the Motor Rifle Regiment, Pyotr Gavrilov, blaming him for spreading fearmongers among the soldiers. But according to him, Hitler is planning to launch a surprise attack on Belarus as they did on Poland. He then expresses grave concerns over Hitler's forces if they attack their stronghold positions. Such an attack would result in the complete encirclement of the Brest fortress, leaving none of the occupants with any means of escape. In the evening, all residents and soldiers go to the cinema, but Kolka is in a different apartment with his sweetheart, enjoying each moment of the evening. However, the power goes off and the cinema suddenly ends. Under the guise of Soviet soldiers, the Germans successfully infiltrated the fortress, cleverly concealing a substantial number of soldiers in the train. Compounding the dire situation, Hitler's men swiftly cut off the water and power supply throughout the entire fortress. That morning of June 22, 1941, Sasha and Anya were fishing on a local lake as the majority were still asleep, unaware that the Germans had officially started their Belarus invasion. Sasha has come to believe that the bombs are only military drills, so he advises Anya to go home since he has to go to the base to sing for the soldiers. Sasha returns to the base, running. But when he gets there, he discovers that the bombs weren't drills but real enemy attacks. Then he tries to take refuge in one of the buildings, but before he does, the house gets bombed and destroyed. Lieutenant Kishevatov hides his wife and the kids in the compartment and bids them farewell. When Gavrilov gets to the east side of the fortress, he finds that the soldiers are disorderly and desperately running to save their lives. He tries to stop them, but everyone is ignoring him. The commander gets the soldiers' attention after firing several rounds into the air and orders them to pick up the weapons from the armory. Sasha also decides to follow them. Since the boy is not allowed to possess a weapon, he picks up his cornet to sing, but another explosion hits the building that sends him into hiding. A soldier tells Sasha to stay inside until the situation calms down. When the Germans storm the hospital, some of the patients attempt to escape by running through the gates. But the wicked Nazi forces shoot everyone down. With their commander missing in action, Commissar Fomin assumes command of the battalion at the fortress's entrance. He also gives the unit orders to shoot every Nazi soldier whoever comes into their line of sight. He instructs the signaller to keep trying to get in touch with the headquarters in order to get reinforcements. Once the commander of the 9th Front gets killed in action, Lieutenant Kashevatov assumes command and orders soldiers to get ready for the counteroffensive. While Fomin is still pleading for reinforcements from the headquarters, Kishevatov's unit charges against the Germans, but their valiant efforts seem to yield little impact. Lieutenant Vainston receives an unexpected order from a soldier donning Soviet uniforms, urging him to divide the unit into smaller groups and surrender. This sounds suspicious. Then Vainston demands to see the soldier's documents. The distinct shoe marks eventually reveal that he is a German spy. Despite his best efforts to run, Vainston shoots him dead before he can even jump out of the window. Kolka returns to the theater to look for his girlfriend, but the Germans have already occupied the apartment. The enemy catches him and kicks him off the balcony in front of his girlfriend. Commissar Fomin and his unit are still trying to get in touch with their headquarters. However, they stumble upon a group of hospital patients huddled together and being pushed away by the Germans. Fomin's display of ingenuity unfolded as he made the decision to lay down his weapon alongside another soldier, seemingly surrendering unarmed. As they approached the unsuspecting enemy, Fomin's voice thundered in Russian, commanding the civilians to get down. In a split second, the Soviet soldiers unleash a hail of gunfire upon the wicked Nazi forces. For the moment, Fomin rescues the women and children and later takes them into the basement. Shortly after, he gives an order to the truck driver to survey the events happening on other fronts. In the midst of the chaos, Sasha finds refuge behind the tree near his house, desperately seeking a way to locate his missing brother. He enters the house and asks two survivors about the whereabouts of Alexander, but the moment was shattered as a barrage of bullets rained upon the building. Then the injured soldier instructs Sasha to leave the house as soon as possible to escape the encirclement. The husband makes an unthinkable choice. With a single gunshot, he ends the life of his dearest wife before succumbing to his injuries. Sasha takes cover in her compartment at the moment a Nazi soldier shows up in the ruined building. The bodies prevent the Soviet soldier from going through, so he has to retreat. However, when the German soldiers show up, they just run over them to enter the fortress. Gavrilov's unit fearlessly engages the advancing Nazi forces, strategically employing explosives to cripple their armored tanks before launching a courageous charge. Amid the echoes of gunfire and the scent of smoke, Gavrilov finds a young soldier on the brink of death. He asked him his name, and with a fading breath, the boy said Alexander Akimov, brother to Sasha. The Lieutenant Weinstein unit is facing a grim reality. Their ammunition is rapidly depleting, and the arrival of reinforcements seems delaying. Gavrilov holds a funeral, and as they bury Alexander Akimov, Lieutenant Kishivatov goes back to the house to check on his family. He discovers that more refugees have joined them in hiding, but Anya is not among them. Then he decides to relocate them to the barracks. Kolka wakes up and sees that the Germans are forcefully grabbing his sweetheart. But after realizing that he had no chance of saving her from the Nazi forces, he made the unfortunate decision to sneak out of the building. Sasha finds himself in the middle of the battlefield, hearing the Germans ordering the remaining Soviet soldiers to surrender. The boy decides to follow the surrendering group, but when he sees Lieutenant Kishivatov and his soldiers, he abandons the group and runs towards his comrades. Sasha witnesses the tense interrogation between the Soviet soldiers and the captured German prisoner. But skepticism clouds the Soviets when the soldier tells them German forces have already seized control of Minsk. The sound of the approaching airplane temporarily lifts Gavrilov and his unit's spirits, but their hearts collectively sink when they see their airplane mercilessly shot down by German forces. The pilot ejects himself from the wreckage and makes a brave landing within the compound. The pilot regretfully informs them that there's no external assistance since the German forces have successfully seized a lot of Russian army bases. The soldiers are running out of supplies, particularly water. Even though Gavrilov's team finds water, it's contaminated with gasoline and unfit for consumption. Fomin gives orders to two soldiers to gather all fit soldiers in order to launch an assault collectively. Ignoring Sasha's offer to volunteer himself, Fomin instructs him to deliver the water canister to the injured. The boy takes the water bottle to the doctor, but as he turns to leave, he hears one of the injured soldiers suggesting the possibility of water in the supply depot. Then the boy makes it his mission to fetch it. Sasha drags himself across the battlefield, where he meets a gravely injured soldier. He asks Sasha to convey his message to the commander before he passes out. He enters the storage room, where he meets Anya. They hide themselves when they notice the Nazi soldiers searching for food. However, Sasha pulls the trigger and kills him without a second thought. Then he informs Anya that he must go since he still has a message to deliver to the commander. First he gets to the river and fills the kettle with water, then he takes to Gavrilov's unit at the eastern front. After Fomin's unit shoots the flare into the sky, the remaining units join them to initiate a breakthrough. But in the end, they are overpowered. Then all the commanders ordered their soldiers to fall back. The following morning, the Germans offered a ceasefire and asked them to surrender their weapons.
Сделай что-нибудь, командир.
Sasha finds Anya and gives her some water after waking her up. Kishivatov orders his wife to go with elderly people and children to surrender to the Germans, but for him, he decides to stay behind with his men. The wife rallied the innocent civilians, holding a white flag to surrender. Just then, Lieutenant notices Sasha supporting his daughter as she walks the distance and rushes towards them. The father and daughter hug each other and share an emotional reunion. He then gives Sasha the order to surrender with Anya to the Germans. That afternoon, the wicked Nazi forces struck the fortification with a 2-ton bomb, which seemed not to be enough for them. They later used flamethrowers to kill the people who refused to surrender and were hiding in the buildings. When the Germans learn that the truck driver is still alive, they call him and take a victory picture. The high-ranking Nazi officer then takes him inside the cinema to collect all the badges from the dead Soviet soldiers. To Kolka's disappointment, he discovers his sweetheart's lifeless body. Then he noticed a hand grenade and unpinned it. Kolka detonated the grenade when the German soldier approached him. He collapses and dies next to his sweetheart. Outside the building, a confused Soviet soldier begins to play the accordion for the Germans. One Nazi officer gives him a clap. But he finally killed him with a gunshot. On June 29, 1941, the German forces took full control of the Brest fortress. They made all surrendered Soviets line up, But soldiers who identify themselves as Jews, communists, or commissars are withdrawn from the group. Fomin turns around with an exhausted smile and identifies himself as a Jew, a communist, and a commissar to the Germans. They removed him and put him to death by firing squad. Commander Gavrilov thanks his men for their bravery in serving the USSR, then gives them the final order to escape. Sasha shows up out of nowhere with a water canister and the gun. He informs Lieutenant Kashevatov that he has escaped from the Germans, but while he was running through the forest, a bomb dropped next to him, which has made him deaf. The lieutenant instructs the boy to take the flag of the Soviet Union with him. If he survives, he should narrate the story of the 333rd Regiment and how they tried to defend the fortress. Even though he can't hear what he's saying, Sasha takes the flag and leaves. Lieutenant Kishevatov stays behind and tells his men to try for a breakthrough. He covers for his soldiers as they depart the building to escape. But he ultimately runs out of ammo after firing several rounds. He pulls out his family picture to bid his family farewell. The Nazi soldier throws a hand grenade at his position, killing him. Sasha Akimov luckily made it out of the fortress, making him the only survivor of Operation Barbarossa. It begins to rain as he enters a field and hides the flag under his uniform. An elderly Alexander stops at the Brest fortress monuments with his grandson and informs him that the Nazi forces executed all the hostages one by one. He tells him that he still retains the flag that Lieutenant Kashevatov handed him. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to watch more of my videos. Have a good day.